Welcome to Mid-South Viewpoint. I'm Byron Tyler. Today we want to talk with the founder and president of All Things Possible. It didn't start out that way for Victor Marx. His father preferred pimping and dealing drugs to child rearing. His 4 stepbrothers were criminals and alcoholics. Victor attended 14 schools and lived in 17 houses by the time he graduated from high school. And the U.S. Marines gave him some structure to this crazy life, and martial arts became a means to vent much of his anger. And it wasn't until his dad became a Christian that Victor had a life-changing experience with both his earthly father and his heavenly father. Victor, welcome to Mid-South Viewpoint.
Thank you, Byron. It's great to be here.
Isn't it interesting how God orchestrates things in our lives? I just met you about 10 minutes ago.
Right.
My son met you about 24 hours ago, or maybe a little less than that time, at a meeting that he was at. And he came home and he said, "Dad, I just heard the wonderful story of Victor Marx. I've got his book." And I mean, he was just saying all these things that God had done in his life. And the thing that really was impressive to him and really spoke to him, as he shared with me, Victor, your story, he had tears in his eyes because it really impacted him when he talked about how you were able to forgive someone who did horrible things to you.
Yeah.
And he said that really, really impressed him.
Well, it is amazing that God is just in a short amount of time. I mean, and being here in Memphis, that the Lord opened the doors to be able to sit down with you and visit and talk to your listening audience. But it was great to meet your son last night. And yeah, the Lord was present at that meeting. And when I share my story, because I've never considered myself some super great speaker. I just talk and been able to share what the Lord has done in my life, His story in my life. People do get affected.
Originally, you grew up in Louisiana,
Yep.
so if folks sense a little Southern talk there, that's because you're from down home.
Yeah, I keep thinking I don't have an accent, but people often remind me I do. So yeah, I was raised in Louisiana, spent time in Mississippi and Texas.
You also spent some time on staff with Focus on the Family. Of course,
I did.
That program is heard right here on Bott Radio Network.
Yes, I had the privilege of being an assistant to Dr. Dobson and love Focus and all that they do for the family.
So you had 9 different stepdads?
No, it was actually kind of, here's the nutshell of it. My father, as you mentioned, was a drug dealer and a pimp. My mother married 6 times total. I went to 14 schools and I lived in 17 different houses. I mean, that's kind of the basis of my upbringing before I was able to get out.
You know, we look at families today, we see so many dysfunctional homes, and there's different levels of dysfunction because we're all born in sin, you know?
Yeah.
So there's going to be some level of dysfunction. But, you know, we see where there's, abuse in some homes, and that was kind of the story for you.
It was, and, I joke around because some of the abuse was so severe, I have to make lighthearted because, one, it's emotionally exhausting for me in many ways to recount it, but 2, it's heavy for the audience to listen. So I try to make light. When people say I come from a dysfunctional background, I go, well, actually, we never functioned. So I don't even know if we were dysfunctional. But yes, I think one of Satan's biggest tactics and schemes is to invade the family unit and destroy it, and especially a child. Because if you can get to a child through abuse or neglect or whatever, in either father who's absent or father who's abusive, then you really taint a kid's view of God as a father. And it becomes a very real issue for a child to grow up and trust an invisible God.
Well, Victor, you work a lot with teens all over, and that's really what your ministry, All Things Possible, is really all about, troubled teens. We can look at our society all across our country, and we see, homes that are fatherless. Fathers don't show up, even sometimes if they're at home.
Right.
They're just not there.
Present but absent.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the kids that we predominantly reach through ATP Ministries are kids who are locked up. I mean, we see the highest level of, I don't even know if they're at risk, they're more high risk. They've had behavior or done things that have caused them to be unmanageable by any other means than incarceration. And And when I say kids, I'm talking 8 years old and up.
Wow.
Yeah, who are doing time in youth prisons. It's not just a little juvie hall, maximum security prisons. So I visit with kids, the extreme range, that some of them shouldn't even be in there, but there's no other place to put them. Maybe emotional issues, but that's where they place them, to kids who kill. And I've seen the worst of the worst in our country.
How are you received when you go?
Well, initially when I go in, I come in as a motivational speaker, inspirational, and I tell the kids, okay, my background is martial arts. I hold 3 different black belts, a 7th degree in jiu-jitsu, 7th in karate, and a 4th degree in weapons. I've trained over 30 world champions. I've worked with Delta Force guys, SEAL team members, training using martial arts and hand-to-hand combat. And when I tell them that, or somebody introduce me, these kids typically go, you got to be kidding me. Because I'm not a physical specimen of some huge tough guy. But I tell the kids, well, like today, I was just in a facility today here in Memphis, and they brought in the kids, and they said, man, these kids are hard. And one of them, a known gang member, he's tatted up, and he's sitting there with so much hate in him. And the staff actually said, we have to watch him in case he, explodes. And when, I did the introduction, they're all just shaking their head, especially him. And I said, well, it doesn't really matter what a person says. It's what they do that qualifies really what they believe. And I said, I've just given you guys my qualifications as a martial artist. Would you like to see a couple of moves? And they're like, yeah, go. What you going to do? So I pulled out this hard kid. I said, I need a volunteer. He raised his hand like, yeah, call me. I'll show you. So I pulled him up, and I pulled out a training pistol, full size and weight, and chambered it back and had him. I said, why don't you act like you're mugging me? And this guy stuck it in his belt, in his pants. He said, I'm used to this.
He had the routine down.
He had it down. And he pulled out this gun. He put it right to my head. And the hammer is back, and his finger's on the trigger. And I said, all you have to do is pull the trigger before I get you. And everybody's laughing. He's going, there ain't no way. And we've timed it as 0.24 tenths of a second. I'm able to disarm, strip the weapon, and pull the magazine out and have it pointed back at him. And when I did that to him, his mouth dropped open, and he actually let out a yell. He's like, ah! And this big, tough guy got scared. And everybody's hooping and hollering. And then it provided me an opportunity to say, now, how many of you misjudged me when I came in here? I said, if I was on the street and you tried to take my change, how many of you want to misread me? And they all raising their hands. And so this kid too going, yeah, man, you ain't kidding. I says, a lot of times I think people misjudge the person of Jesus Christ. He's more than just someone that hangs on a cross around your neck. And he's more than what you see people. What he says, he does, which really justifies his claims.
Victor, you mentioned the anger that many of these teens, and even as young as 8 years old, have bottled up within, and it seems to be the fuel for their life. You were there one time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that anger was what drove you.
Yeah, a lot of times because of injustices that happen to a child, from innocence being stolen, or just things are wrong. I mean, you know they're wrong. Innately, you know they're wrong. A mother bringing home another guy. Sexual activity, abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, even emotional abuse. The kid knows it's wrong, but he seems powerless. There's nothing he can do. So what do you do with the anger? You either strike out at others or you bottle it up and explode. That happened to me. It happens to a lot of kids. And unfortunately, as I told the kids today, you grow and you get to a place where you bottle up so much anger, there's a transference of it on other people. Because you haven't been able to properly, process really righteous anger. Because, I mean, how bad is it for a kid to not have the ability to express his anger if he's being abused or something? That's not even realistic. So, but people don't want them to process it, and then all of a sudden, boom, it comes out in horrible behavior and then activity.